everybody. My name is Mike Geske. I'm your IT guy filling in for Bob and Joseph, who are playing hooky today. Today we have Lance Sexton, our Coleman extraordinaire, trainer extraordinaire, Delaney Sexton, our Fraud Friday extraordinaire, and Mike Rosman. How you doing, right, Mike? CEO and co-founder of Bowfly.
Good to see you. Thanks, Mike.
It's good to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Today we have a good show today. As always, you know how to ask questions. I probably should have changed that to say mike@colemanreport.com, but that's okay. I got Joseph's email open, so if you got any questions, send them in the portal or through an email. As always, too, our certificate of training to proof that you are to SBA that you are being compliant in training. And our first story, guys, revision to the financial information verification procedure. Lance, what can you tell me about this?
Well, of course, the IRS shut down the utilization of the 4506T when we go to get transcripts and verify tax returns with the transcripts. The 4506C has been in place for a little while, but what they've basically done is given us the option of either using the 4506C or the IRS Form 8821 for tax return verification. Now, the IRS Form 8821 is not dramatically different than the 4506T or the 4506C. You just have to make sure, the comments, you want to make sure that you put your banking information as a designee in line number 2, and just read the instructions on the first couple that you complete. You know how the IRS is. If you get one thing wrong on one of the tax transcript forms, they reject it and send it back to you. So make sure you look the form over, read the instructions, complete it fully before submitting it to the IRS. But I think this is a good thing. There's 2 different avenues for you as a participant bank in submitting for the tax information verification. So the other thing that's critical at the bottom of the slide, it says you need to, whatever form you use, whether it's a 4506C or the IRS Form 8821, make sure and keep that. The copies of the tax transcript information received and the copy of your reconciliation of that information in your SBA loan file. Mike, have you heard much about this change?
No, we do hear people occasionally reference the T, and we remind them that we're on C now. But it's a pretty straightforward process. We actually have heard some lenders that are using technology providers to actually pull that data a little bit more efficiently. You still need to keep the form on file. We don't provide that service ourselves, but we are aware of some folks that do it. But it's part of the making sure you have all your documents in place.
Well, guys, Mike and I have known each other for a while, and we have common friends in the industry. And I hate to do this to you, Mike, but there was some legislation being talked about. And I think the senator is actually in your home state. I think you shared that with me. But Elizabeth Warren and another senator was proposing legislation related to franchise lending with SBA. And Mike, what it basically was implying is that there are some rogue franchises that make promises that don't necessarily turn out to be the case when borrowers get an SBA loan with a franchise. Now, you and I both know, Mike, that whether it's an approved franchise or not, the borrower still has to implement the plan and make it work. But I just wanted to get your thoughts. They were suggesting, and I didn't get enough detail, but it was almost like they were suggesting, Mike, it be like student loan forgiveness for franchise borrowers who don't have a positive outcome. So what?
Yeah, well, it's funny, Lance. I think there's been certainly within the Democratic Party, there's been a lot of focus on franchising to say, is this a model that we understand, and really in part, what roles do unions play? I think there's a lot of sympathies around unions within the Democratic Party, but there have been some rogue franchise wars. I think the the Democrats have, I suspect, from time to time tried to legislate their way out of these situations. But the fact is, a bad player is a bad player. And whether the government's going to be able to protect every franchisee in that process is questionable. I think that, certainly the courts are available to the franchisee. But, what we know from our experience and the lenders that we work with who do franchise lending, whether they source their opportunities through BoeFly or elsewhere, you do want to understand the quality of the franchise brand. And that's important for a lender. It's important for that franchisee who's taking the primary capital risk. And there have been bad players out there. There was a handful of examples of franchisors that didn't behave well and failed. It's the risk of the lender, it's the risk of the franchisee, it's the risk of the SBA as part of that process. And I'm afraid we're not going to be able to legislate our way out of it, despite maybe some good intentions on a positive view, Lance. I'll leave it at that.
Well, the one thing too, Mike, and just share, the SBA approved franchise list, that's just meaning that SBA has reviewed the franchise agreement and considered it a franchise. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're right. So as those who do franchise lending understand, the FTC is responsible for making sure that there is a franchise disclosure document that brands adhere to in order to register themselves as a franchise. So, Lance, if you wanted to become a franchisee of ABC brand, that franchisor cannot make undue earnings claims to you other than what's represented in that franchise disclosure document. And that franchise disclosure document is governed by the FTC. What it is not, and so, what the SBA says is for SBA loans to take place to franchisees pursuing a franchise brand, we want to make sure that they were part of that FTC process, that there is a franchise disclosure document on file. That is not the same as whether it's a worthy franchise brand. And that's an entirely different matter. And so the lenders know, who do franchise lending, that as part of compliance with the SBA, it has to be on the franchise directory as a bona fide brand that has an FDD. That is not the same as whether it's a worthy brand whose franchisees deserve access to capital. And so it is a distinction that's very important.
Well, one final thing, Mike, and then I'm excited to get to Delaney's story because it's about Pokemon. But Mike, one final thing, if you could just share with us briefly what BoeFly does and how a participant bank might use that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So our primary focus is working with franchisors and helping them grow. This past quarter, in the first quarter of 2022, we've actually worked with more than 100 franchise brands to diligence their applicants to make sure that the franchise applicant is a good fit for the franchise brand. We look at liquidity, net worth, criminal background, and their credit report for the benefit that the franchisor gets of knowing that it's a bona fide franchise applicant and they have the financial wherewithal. At the same time, we then make ourselves available to help that franchise applicant connect with the right lender or lenders who are seeking to deploy capital within the system. So, Lance, to pick on you again, if you wanted to become a Sonic franchisee, for instance, Sonic is going to require that you go through our workflow to be diligenced by the brand. As a next step, if you wanted our help to get you an SBA loan or a conventional loan for that matter, we're going to match you, the franchisee, up with the right lender. And so for those lenders who are looking to grow their SBA portfolio, and we work with some amazing brands who have been very diligent in working with franchisees, it's almost a great proxy of who the good brands are. Do they diligence their franchise applicants? You can come to BoeFly.com. We'd love to get you added as a lender to source those franchise opportunities.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Mike. Guys, as my children were growing up, I used to play Pokemon on the Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance, and I had a particular Pokemon that was very effective for me in killing their various Pokemon as we played. So Delaney, take off and tell us about this idle fraudster.
Yeah, so we're bringing you back about a month or two when we spoke about this story, and Me and Father Lance were speculating what card it was that this man purchased with his $85,000 idle loan. He misrepresented his number of employees along with the amount of money he made in a year. So he got an $85,000 loan, spent about, I believe, $56,000 on a Pokemon card. And we found out finally it was a Charizard card. Now, one thing I really want to talk about with this case is he pled guilty, which led to a 3-year sentence along with having to pay restitution of $85,000, a $10,000 fine, and 3 years of supervised release. Now, not that any fraud is okay, this is a relatively smaller case of fraud. And recently I've been reading up on a story. A couple executives of a now defunct bank, they committed a fraud scheme that led to almost $5 million in losses to the SBA, very similarly to the BankServe case, which we have been following. When they sentenced one of the president of this bank, he got 9 months of prison versus, that's $5 million in losses versus an $85,000 loan, which led to 3 years. What do you think is the difference in these COVID loan fraud cases versus a guarantee fraud case?
Well, I think that, I thought about this, Delaney, and I talked about this last evening. I think it's the nature of the case that may indicate the length of the sentence. This one surprises me, quite honestly. But, like the people who got all the money through PPP and had ankle bracelets and cut them off and went to Montenegro, that's a more egregious fraud than the guy who bought the Pokemon card. So it's going to be interesting to see, guys, Mike, Delaney, Mike, 2 Mikes, Mike 1 and Mike 2. It's going to be interesting to see as we work our way through this, how they treat the 2021 fraud, which was, the Biden administration wanted us to go and provide PPP funding to underserved markets. Those loans were all smaller. Most were under $20,000. And there's quite a bit of fraud in there. It's going to be interesting to see when they start prosecuting some of those $8,000 fraud cases, what the sentence will be in those circumstances. So the answer to your question, Delaney, is there doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason to the length of the sentence, but I think it may have to do somewhat with how egregious the fraud was.
Well, I want to finish this story by saying the Charizard card was forfeited, and I believe I read that they are going to be auctioning it off and returning the money to SBA.
Well, I want you to know that'll be the first time in a liquidation that a Charizard card got auctioned.
And you said that was $56,000 for that card?
Yes, actually it was $58,000.
Oh my
a little
goodness.
bit less than $58,000.
And for reference, that card's basically the same as this. So it's $58,000 for a piece of cardboard, just so everybody understands that. All right, Delaney, let's see. Tell me about this continued fraudulent activities.
So Mr. Keon Taylor of Charlotte, North Carolina, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and he has to pay about $250,000 in restitution. Now, throughout the pandemic, he committed quite a few types of fraud across many different programs. He managed to defraud the Department of Labor, the SBA, the North Carolina Division of Employment Security, and many states, including Tennessee, Texas, Ohio, Massachusetts, Nevada, and Arizona, by filing COVID-19 related unemployment insurance benefits. He did this by taking the personal identifying information from people, including their name, social security number, date of birth, address, to apply for all the unemployment benefits. And in addition, he also applied for 3 different loans under the EIDL program using some of these same names and creating false businesses. Now, the interesting thing with this story is after pleading guilty, the federal agents went and searched his apartment and they managed to find equipment that he was using to make these fake ID cards. And he was continuing to make fraudulent IDs even after his guilty plea. He lost his bond after this, and I'm sure it did not help his sentencing.
Well, this guy, comparatively speaking to our Pokemon guy, this is what I'm talking about. He impacted 35 different people, impacted multiple federal and state agencies. If he got 3 years for buying a Pokemon card, this guy needs to get 10 years, but we'll see when they do sentencing.
Well, so he did get 5 years. That was his sentence, with 3 years of supervised release.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. There doesn't appear, I don't know how you feel, Mike, to be any consistency in the sentences that are handed out on these fraud cases.
Yeah, I think you have a hard time finding the reason behind it. I think the right answer is stay on the right side of the law, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell all of my good SBA citizens, your duty in life is not to be on Delaney's Fraud Friday story.
There's words to live by.
I mean, it just surprises me with the lengths that these people will go to just to get, 6 states, 35 people, and then continuing to make fake IDs after you're caught. It's just, how egregious can you be?
It is interesting seeing how many cases that we talk about on this show, people continue to commit crimes and continue to try and fraudulently obtain loans even after being caught for other crimes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Lesson of the day, don't try to defraud the government. Let's see, what do we got going on? Here we have we've released our NAICS for 2022. If you guys are interested in purchasing any of that, please send us an email at mike@colemanreport.com. We just got it all done and out. It's fully ready to go and looking good. Just a little bit of our NAICS and our franchise. I think it's the top. I actually don't know what this one. Oh yeah, top 100. There it is. Sorry, I can read. I promise. And we also have our lender compensation survey available again on our website. And if email us at Joseph or Coleman or Mike at ColemanReport.com, and we'll be able to get that over to you. And we got some upcoming webinars. Lance, tell us about Unforgiven.
Guys, servicing and going through the forgiveness process on PPP loans is my good friend Jim that works with me, and I laugh every morning when we talk because we wake up and there's a new challenge or a new problem to working forgiveness and servicing on your PPP portfolio. The webinar on the 16th is intended to bring up solutions to some of those challenges in PPP servicings. So it's a great training for those who are still working on servicing your PPP portfolio, understanding how to do guarantee purchases, and also understanding interesting things like seizures and other issues with PPP servicing. So please get signed up for that. It'll be a very helpful tool.
Excellent. We have one quick question in the queue for Lance. Lance, exactly what is the difference between the 4506C and 8821, or benefit of one over the other?
I don't think there's a benefit or a substantial advantage between the two forms, and the information collected and submitted is pretty similar. The forms are just a little different looking. So, my recommendation is bring up the new form, look at it, read the instructions, and if it's an easier, better fit for you and you can use it more efficiently, that would be the smart thing to do.
Thank you very much, Lance. Thank you, Mike, for joining us. Thank you, Delaney and Lance, for being here as always. And thank you all for joining us today for the Coleman Report Live and for supporting America, one entrepreneur at a time.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.